It does.
There's a couple people coming in.
Yeah, no.
So our former assembly districts are the same as they do here.
I don't have mine out.
Yeah.
Which I think are the same as they were in 60.
Yeah, it's now 60.
You good?
Yep.
Good evening. Good evening and welcome to the regularly scheduled board meeting of the Granville Exempted Village School District. It's nice to see everyone here this evening. Would you please rise and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Ready? Please take the roll.
Mr. Jennings,
Aye.
Mr. Miller,
Here.
Dr. Corman,
Here.
Ms. Deeds.
Here.
First order of business is something that we are very excited about and pleased that you're here with us this evening to see. As you may well know, we've had a vacancy on our board membership for the last 2 months. We've gone through a lengthy process, which I'll explain in a moment, but at this time I would entertain a motion to nominate a successor to the open board.
So,
It would kind of help to say who you're nominating.
oh, I would be proud to nominate Fred Wolf.
I second the motion.
So before we vote on that, let me take a moment to explain to you what we've done. Andrew Cohn, an elected board member, resigned when he moved out of the district. We published in a lot of local media the fact that we were seeking to replace him. We received 11 applications for that position. We conducted 10 interviews, and one of the applicants withdrew prior to the interview process. We spent in excess of 5 hours interviewing the 10 applicants for the position. We were extraordinarily pleased with the depth, breadth, and quality of the applicants for this position. It's very comforting and encouraging to know that there are so many wonderful people in this district who are willing to put themselves out for that position, and we frankly struggled mightily trying to narrow that 10 down to 1 because the option of expanding our board wasn't available to us. We spent the better part of 2 meetings in executive session discussing the various candidates, discussing their responses to our questions, and in fact the questions they posed to us, which were terrific and caused us to review and think about what we do as an administrative body, as a board, as a governing body, and as a school district. And at the end of that process, we arrived at what I believe is a consensus on the nominee to the board, and that person is, as Ms. Deeds has indicated, is Fred Wolf. So if there's any other discussion or comments from any of my fellow board members, I would open up to that.
I was just so pleased with the range of folks that came out, and again, many of us said, "Wow, they would be as qualified as myself." and I hope that those individuals that were not selected for this nomination will consider to be engaged in some other way. We have a lot of great opportunities in the school district for all community members to be engaged through our superintendents committees, through other activities with the school, through leadership of various organizations. And so there's great opportunities, and that's really what makes this district tick, is the connection that we have with so many of our community members and the care and the time that they put into education. And so thank you to all that interviewed, and thank you to all in the community that spent so much time and energy. I'm looking forward to moving forward with the full board in the future to continue the great work.
Fred and his wife, Diana, have 3 kids who graduated from the Granville schools. They've lived in the district for 19 years, and I could spend the next 30 minutes reciting to you the litany of volunteer activities that Fred has engaged in over the course of his time here in Granville. Suffice to say that he has been clearly someone who is committed not only to the community, as evidenced by his work with the Kiwanis and the Rec District, but to Granville schools. With his work in the athletic boosters, with his work as a volunteer coach, with his work supporting everything that we do as a school district. And so I'm thrilled to welcome, I'm presuming the vote, I'm thrilled to welcome Fred to the board. So with that, I would ask Mr. Sobel to call the roll.
Ms. Deeb.
Aye.
Mr. Miller.
Aye.
Dr. Corman.
Aye.
Mr. Janice.
Aye. It's up to you.
Don't
You
sit
need
down
to
for
speak to everyone.
Yeah,
Bear
okay.
with us for a moment. We have to now update our,
No, oath of office.
oh, that's right. Yes, right, you're not official.
Do you solemnly swear that you will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Ohio, and that you will faithfully and impartially discharge your duties as a member of the Board of Education of the Granville Exempted Village School District, Licking County, Ohio, to the best of your ability, and in accordance with the laws now in effect and hereinafter to be enacted during your continuance in said office and until your successor is elected and qualified?
I will.
You have a pen.
Don't want green.
I left my pen over there. Sign your. And here's your, like your temporary driver's license.
Thank you.
Now I'll ask you just bear with us for a moment. We have to do a photo to update the website. Where are we going?
Where do you want us? Right here?
Do I have to get in this too?
Yes. Do I have a choice?
Yeah.
Oh.
Last time we had them book in them. Somebody hug the chair, just turn it that way. Thank you.
Don't you want somebody here?
And one more for good measure. Thank you.
Thank you for your patience.
Then before we get started, does anybody who wants an agenda that didn't get one?
There's more
We need
agendas.
more copies.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Yes.
Darn serious.
I know.
Did you check that?
GRDs isn't quite as intense,
Ours is.
but we do have an oath.
Okay. Please.
All right, this brings us to the commendation section of our board agenda, where we commend certain staff, students, and community members for exemplary performance or service to the community. So our Blue Aces competed in winter sports and had great seasons. So we are proud of their efforts. Tonight, we'd like to recognize athletes on the wrestling and swim teams who competed at the state level. So our wrestlers were Douglas Terry, who was the first GHS freshman in program history to qualify for the state wrestling tournament, and Keegan Van Meter, who also competed in the state tournament at 170 pounds. Congratulations for representing GHS, and please come up with Coach Bergeron. Now, as Beth's getting ready, you know, dad was a wrestling coach in Newport for many years. That's why I
I don't
played
like
ice
doing
hockey.
that.
Just saying.
Oh, no, now I am.
Well done. The board would also like to congratulate 4 swim team members who competed at the state swim meet. Sarah Martin swam the 100, 200 freestyle, and the 400 freestyle relay. Alexandra Speck, Hannah Sturgeon, and Brianna White all swam in the 400 freestyle relay. And please come up with your coaches, Hillary and Tyler. And look, Dad's already I think it's important to recognize athletics and what it does to build discipline, perseverance, and really round out the educational process in Granville schools. It takes a ton of time and dedication, and these students are great athletes, but they're also great students. So congratulations. I know it takes a lot of work and effort and dedication, so congratulations. We really are proud of you. So thank you. Next, we'd like to represent or congratulate and commend a group of GHS teachers who do a fantastic job every year with the Senior Global Awareness Project. So I'm going to introduce them in a minute, but the Global Awareness Project really has been a project that morphed with project-based learning. And so it's a multidisciplinary process that our seniors go through to really do exactly what it says. Develop a better awareness of global issues and research them, try and find solutions, and in some circumstances take action to resolve those. But these teachers go above and beyond to try and set the students up for success by connecting with Ohio State professors and students at Ohio State, with Denison professors. Beth Simmons, I know you're out there somewhere. She works her tail off to try and find students that have a first-person perspective of what countries students are studying. And so I think it's a multidisciplinary team that really puts together a great process for our students right before they graduate. Some would call it a capstone project, but I think it's a life project. So we'd like to recognize Jim Redding, Lori Hudson, Adam Teeters, Ryan Schweigert, Sally Gummery, Derek Hall, and Beth Simmons. Come on.
Can we get the picture from this angle? All right. I have no good side.
Did you realize you're the veil head?
Thank you. Congratulations.
Finally, each year, the Coghlan Automotive Group honors one teacher from each district in Lincoln County with the You Make a Difference Award. For 2018, the Granville Schools honoree is Derek Fisher, GHS Latin teacher. The purpose of the award is to recognize and honor each recipient for his or her outstanding effort to make a difference in the lives of students. Any teacher from pre-kindergarten through 12th grade is eligible. Derek was nominated by McKinley Kramer for going above and beyond the Latin curriculum to teach students life lessons about what they need to know in this world. Congratulations, Derek.
Yes, I do. Okay, next we have our student report. The student report is an opportunity to hear from students. Usually we have a student body president or somebody come to talk about what's been going on at GHS or around the district. But I had the pleasure of listening to a couple of students talk about saving the bees. And I said, you know what? I would love to have you come and talk a little bit about your project with the board, because we have been involved in a lot of project-based learning in Granville schools, and it's an opportunity for us to connect the dots between the board, the administration, and the students about what work they're doing. So I'd like to invite our student representatives from the Bee Project up to the microphone. You do not have a PowerPoint, right? Oh, you do? Okay. Well, yeah, we can get you.
I also brought honey.
Oh, all right. I'm not lost on the coloring either. Yellow.
What did he say?
Not lost on the coloring.
I just want to taste it. It's just local organic honey from the farm.
All right. And if you could talk into the microphone, that would be fantastic. And make sure you introduce who you are.
I need a straw.
No, I think I have to take that microphone.
Dress me up, you can't take me out. I'm good. Yeah.
It's worth it. Good stuff.
That's really good.
Where we show up looking.
That doesn't constitute a bribe or anything, right?
I got
Business
our
calories, it doesn't count. Apparently, they already have their funding secured.
Okay.
17th
Yeah,
commercial
yeah.
report from, well, my business, so.
Yeah.
But,
We get a,
you know, mostly proofing.
Okay, so you've set a new standard. Every student group now has to bring a treat. So thank you. You can go ahead and get started, and that way we'll catch up with the technology.
Like out of it, so like pass it out.
Sure.
Okay. I'm Megan Coffey. I'm a senior at Granville School.
It's working.
Okay. Catherine Gross, also a senior.
I'm Claire Duncan, and I'm a junior. And this is Emily Neal, and she is a sophomore. And today we're presenting to you our Take Action project through Mr. Redding's AP Enviro class. For our Take Action project, we decided to implement a bee apiary in our treasured land lab at Granville Intermediate. Through our plan, we plan to implement 5 hives of bees in phase 3.1 of the land lab, which we will show you on our map. These bees will provide unmatched pollination to our prairies and all of the greenland surrounding the intermediate school. And it will set up a plan for the future to possibly harvest honey to use in our cafeterias and to possibly sell at the farmers market to create revenue.
So a lot of the Take Action project is not only like our student involvement, but student involvement for like future students and down the road. So since Catherine and I are seniors and there's another senior or two on our group, that just leaves Claire and Emily. We've talked to Mr. Redding, and there's ways to get, managing the bees, more a sustainable student-run kind of project. Kids can do it as part of enrichment assignments that they do for Mr. Redding's class. So we're really trying to make sure because like bees always have a problem where they die over the winter. So we definitely wanted to make sure they survived, but also keep student involvement because it's a great learning opportunity. So. Okay.
The honey's good.
Yeah, the honey was very good.
So tell us how long you've been working on the project.
So we started.
We've been working on it all year, and some of the goals we want to get out of this project. Number one, as far as environmentally, bees are incredibly important to the whole world, and as pollinators, they do a lot of work for most plants that you see outside, and so then they're kind of threatened as a species, and their population has been dropping, and so anything we can do to help that is a big goal of ours. And also education with bees and pollination and all of that aspects of nature. We want to provide that education to the students of Granville. So,
ever since like you're a little kid, it's common for people to be afraid of bees. But the honeybees that we'll be using, Italian honeybees, they're very docile and calm bees. And they're not prone to stinging because they only get one sting and then they're gone. So it's only if they feel threatened that they will sting. And the placement of our hives is as far away from the intermediate school playground as possible to provide for safety. And we're currently working with Mrs. Burris to, once we implement our actual hives, to be able to go into the intermediate school and give a presentation about what we've done and about the bees and how to be safe around them. Because they're really kind bees, and if you're kind to them, they'll be kind back.
So, so as we kind of talked about, our plan, we're putting 5 hives in phase 3.1 of the land lab, and our goal is to educate the kids in Granville schools on the importance of bees in the environment. So as you can see, right towards the top where the cursor is now circling is where the bees will go in regards to the area of the land lab. We kind of talked about this too already, but why bees? They're pollinators. They're really important for most of the plants on Earth. Education for Granville students, helping a threatened species. We want to help them because as they're so important for our environment, it's really important that we keep them alive and thriving. And we hope in future years students will continue with this project and hopefully collect honey from the hives one day to be used in the cafeterias and as well as maybe sales, selling them to community members. Yeah.
So right now we currently have our budget all figured out. We just recently met with the Kiwanis of Granville about a grant opportunity to fund this project. And it looks like the money we'll receive from Kiwanis and the money we already have from the Land Lab Fund will be able to cover all 5 hives worth of bees and the necessary equipment we'll need. My father was actually a beekeeper for 7 years and had to retire due to allergies. But he's offered to build us the hives, and he has great experience with that. So currently our entire project is funded. The only new funding would be needed if future students want to implement honey harvesting, which requires more equipment. We've also reached out in the community with this project, and we're currently working on a deal with the Bee Barons. They're a local beekeeping company in Newark, and they're going to be supplying us with the bees and giving us discounted prices on our necessary equipment. And
we plan to reach out to the neighbors of the land lab. There's one neighbor who actually, I believe, keeps bees. So It'll be interesting to work with them and, again, just educating Granville as a community. Thank you for your time.
Can I ask you a quick question? So you had said harvesting in the future. How long does it take for a hive to become, operational in that respect?
Well, once we get the hive into the actual hive box, it will take a month or two just to settle in, but they actually immediately start producing honey since it's their food source. And harvesting season is usually every fall. So we could start harvesting even in the next fall. It really just requires getting the equipment to do so.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so once you get the equipment, or if you don't get the equipment, would you bring somebody else in? Do you have to harvest the honey before?
We don't have to harvest the honey because they can just live off it through the winter, and it'll help them survive. Yeah.
You mentioned that they may not survive the winter. What can you do to help increase their viability?
Well, not harvesting actually helps because it maintains a healthy amount of food source for them. But also through our plan, we're implementing a monthly maintenance. So just making sure that the future students who will be watching over these bees understand the signs and symptoms of disease within the hives, and really just making sure the hives stay clean and the bees stay happy and healthy is our major goal. So yeah, it's just watching over them and knowing signs and symptoms.
How many bees do you start out with?
A normal hive comes with around 50,000 bees, and they really maintain that size. They can grow, but you can also control the growth of the hive with the size of the box that you build for them.
Phase 3.1, if I remember from a previous project that was talked about and discussed at this board, that area is going to be kind of like a fruit farm. Is that correct?
Yes.
What impact will the bees have on the fruit farm?
Well, they'll provide incredible pollination, and it will really help that agroforestry section thrive and survive.
Is that why you picked that location specifically?
Part of it, yes. The other part is that it was as far as away from the playground as we could get them.
Yeah.
But the bees actually will spend most of their time across the driveway to the intermediate school where the pastures and flowers are. So, yeah.
Okay.
As well as helping with the pollination of the fruit.
Excellent.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Next, we'll move into staff reports. Sure. Before we get started, Vanya, we have three different staff reports scheduled for this evening: safety and security report, and a wellness committee update, both of which you're delivering. And the third is a board policy update, which I think we'll entertain a motion to move that later in the agenda.
Yeah.
So I'll make a motion to move the board policy update until after board discussion.
Second motion.
Take the roll, please.
Dr. Corman,
Yes.
Mr. Miller,
Aye.
Mr. Wolf,
Yes.
Ms. Deeds,
Aye.
Mr. Janine.
And this is just to spare you from some of the length of the mandatory.
Yes, we're trying to get to public comment sooner rather than later.
You are more than welcome to stay and listen to all of that.
You can catch up.
They already left.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so as Tanya's getting set up, every year we go through our annual process that's required by law, but also as a best practice, our safety and security meeting with our first responders and those that help craft the safety plans. So that meeting is coming up April 4th. I'm sure Mr. Sherburne is going to talk about that, but we thought it might be good to just kind of give a general overview of what we do with safety and security. Obviously, we will not share everything, but just kind of an overview of what's required by law and what we do specifically in Granville.
Well, I really like the coordinating outfits with the yellow for the bees, and I'm thinking maybe I should have worn like red or something, green and yellow. I don't know, but I'm in pink tonight, so hold on just a minute. Okay, so I heard Mr. Brown talk about the approval process and how we go through this annually to review our safety plan. And actually, this year, we are in the 3-year cycle. Every 3 years, the plan is sent to the State Department and is under a full evaluation. So we will be meeting, as he said, April 4th, and submitting the plan in May for the Homeland Security to look at and approve. He also mentioned that I would be speaking in generalities about the plan because the plan is only intended for our school personnel and our emergency responders. So we are required by the state to have a safety plan, and listed on this slide are the various components of the safety plan. So I'm going to walk through those just so that you understand a little bit more about what the contents are. First, we have our emergency contact list. This lists all of the essential school personnel, the administrators. It also lists our facilities manager as well as our emergency personnel, first responders, and their contact list. We also have a site plan that we're required to have, and each one of these that I talk about are all separate entities, so those are all uploaded separately and accessible by our first responders individually, so they don't have to sort through a more lengthy plan, which is the emergency operation plan. So our site plan is an aerial view of the school and the surrounding buildings. We are required to identify street names, address, phone number, and also put a compass on that site plan so that we can see what direction the facility is located. We are also new this year going to need to locate fire hydrants and assembly points where the students would gather outside of the site. We also have to submit a floor plan, and on the floor plan we need to introduce the same basic information about the school. We need to have a compass. We need to have separate sheets for each plan, for each floor. So for the high school, we have 2 floor plans. We have to identify all building exits, all rooms by number, all offices, the area for the utilities where they are shut off. We have to identify all locations for fire extinguishers, security cameras, and the location of our AEDs. In addition, we have to identify the area for refuge. So if there is a student or a staff that cannot make it down the stairs, we have to identify an area where they can wait until emergency personnel can arrive. The emergency operation plan is what we often refer to as the safety plan, and I'll kind of refer to that as the meats and potatoes of the plan. That is what we will do in different scenarios that we may hopefully never come across, but if we do, we will be prepared to do so. We also have a signature page that we need to include in our submission to the state. We have to have a variety of people participating on our review team. That includes the chief of police, our fire chief, an official from the county emergency management agency, administrators, school counselors, teachers, parents, some of our secretaries, nurses, our facility manager, and then we have some representatives from Denison that are all on our team. So now I will go through all of the components that are actually in the emergency operation plan that we're required to have by the state. We have an overview of each site. We include demographic information for each school, such as the number of students, the number of teachers and staff. We have to identify the number of students that might have disabilities and what those categories may be. We have to identify the purpose of the plan, how to activate the plan, and of course we have to identify all of our utility contact information for gas, electric, water, internet, trash, food service, just about anything you can think of, we have to have that information in that plan. We have a section on prevention, and that details the training on the plan. We will have to have some additional training through NIMS, which is the National Incident Management System. And we also have to list the drill requirements and the reporting of those drills under that section. The next section is the protection and mitigation piece. we have to do a hazard analysis to determine what threats we may need to plan for. And I'm not going to name all of them, but I will name several that we do need to have plans for. An active shooter, a bomb threat, bus accident, fire, tornado, a hostage situation, chemical accident, death, medical emergency, and as I said, many more. We also have to have response and recovery for each one of those that I mentioned and the others that we have in our plan. We have to have an incident command center, roles and responsibilities, emergency communication system during and after the event. We have to have our evacuation and family reunification plans. We also have to have the plan administration, which talks about the approval and review process. It talks about the committee requirements and the people that are required to be on the committee. It talks about the cycle that I mentioned earlier for the evaluation plan, and also the annual review process. And we have to keep record of whom we disseminate the plan to. They have to sign off on the plan when they received it, and we have to keep record of any changes by date and submit all of that to the state. Navigate Prepared is a web-based platform, and we also have an app for it that is for our staff to use. The web-based platform houses all of the documents that I just mentioned to you. The people that have access to the web-based platform are administrators within the school district and emergency personnel. The floor plans are probably the most interesting or utilized, I guess, feature that we would be needing in an emergency event, because it has an overlay for different components that we are required to identify. What I mean by that is it'll have a floor plan, and then there will be icons across the top. And if we need to identify where the AEDs are located, we would click on that icon. All of the AEDs would populate onto the floor plan. Then we can click on the AEDs again, and they will go off. We have cameras. We're required to locate where the cameras are on our floor plan. So if you were to click on the camera icon, all of the cameras would populate the floor plan, and then you can actually click on the camera and you can see the video feed for that area that you're looking at. So that is extremely beneficial for emergency situations where the emergency personnel or administrators could easily identify what cameras and what areas they needed to look at if there was an emergency situation. I want to emphasize that those are only accessible to administrators and personnel, emergency personnel, and we do have data. We can see who has been logged in and watching videos, and it's only used for situations that would warrant that. There are also photos of each classroom, and they have a 360-degree view of those classrooms. And the Navigate app is what our staff has on their phones if they have a smartphone. If they don't have a smartphone, then they have a flip chart, a hard copy of that. If you can see in the right-hand corner, that is a picture of what our app looks like. Teachers have that downloaded on their phone, and each one of those different colors is one of those hazards that I mentioned earlier. So for example, there's one up there that is listed tornado. So if we needed to know what to do in a tornado situation, we would just touch that, and then it would slide over and it shows all the directions for what you should do in that situation. Now, obviously, this is not something that we hope that we ever need to use in an emergency situation, nor do we think that our teachers, if there is an active shooter, which I hope that there never is, that they would have time to go to their phones and hit, what do I do with an active shooter, and then respond. This is more for a training piece so that they know what to do when that does happen. And we do practice these quite frequently, which I will get to in just a minute. But this, once you download this, you don't have to have Wi-Fi capability or cell phone access to be able to see the plans. And this is only for our staff. Our drills, we have fire drills monthly. We have tornado drills April through June, of course, when we are in session. We have safety drills 3 times a year, plus we do one theoretical drill with the students. Every year we practice an evacuation, and then we go to the reunification site. We alternate years between 7th through 12th grade and through K6. So this year we did an evacuation to the reunification site for 7 through 12. Last year we did one for K through 6. When we practice the evacuation, it is accompanied with training. We also are HeartSafe accredited, and along with that HeartSafe accreditation, we have 4 emergency medical drills per year. This allows us to practice implementing our emergency medical team, using our CPR skills and the AED. This also allows us, once a year, we practice where the emergency personnel will actually transition from taking care of the patient to us transferring that to the emergency personnel. So that is a very beneficial activity, and we're lucky that our fire department will do that with us. Training. We have school active shooter training. We partner with the local sheriff's office to train teachers and students 7 through 12, like I said, when that happens with the evacuation drill, where we go to the reunification site. We spend really the whole day on training and then the evacuation. 4 years ago, I think it was 4 or 5 years ago, the entire staff was trained. And now we partner with the ESC that every time in the orientation in August, when we have new employees, we train all of those new employees on the process. We're going to host it again this year. Last year, we hosted it for its first time. We also train all of our staff on CPR and first aid. They were initially trained 3 years ago. Last year, we did the recertification because the certification, of course, is only good for 2 years. It's also embedded into the orientation program that we have for our new employees. So all of our staff are trained with CPR and first aid, and we're very proud of that. Our teachers and all of our staff actually participate in modules on public schools work. These are courses that they need to take at the beginning of each school year. They have a wide range of topics, and just to name a few, although we have some teachers in here that I know could name several more. We do review CPR and first aid. We review the Heimlich maneuver. We review caring for diabetic students. We also have student medical emergencies, which includes training on the EpiPens. We have several tools and resources in our schools to help support our safety initiatives. We have AEDs, and we are very fortunate in this. We have 2 to 3 in each school building. We have 1 at the soccer, softball concessions area. We have 1 at the football concessions, 1 at the indoor hitting facility by the baseball field. We have 1 that travels with the trainer, and we have 2 that can travel with the coaches if they have practice off of our campus. We also have go buckets in every room. This was initiated several years ago by the high school staff, and they partnered with local first responders to put together that. The Go Bucket contains basically some medical first aid equipment that they can use in an emergency situation. We also have cameras throughout our buildings, and we are currently working with the sheriff's office and our local fire department to implement some barricading devices for our classrooms. Communication. Communication can be tricky at times, and over the past 2 years, we have purchased new handheld radios for our staff, not for all of our staff, but for our administrators, guidance counselors, essential people that are in the office or near offices that we need to communicate across the district and across the school building. We have 2 different kinds of radios right now that are in each building. One radio type can communicate across the entire school building. Like the elementary school has several radios that they can communicate in that building. We also have another type of radio that communicates with those older radios, I'll say, and then it also communicates across the district. So we have radios here in our office that we can communicate with the administrators or whoever has a radio over at the intermediate school, which is pretty powerful for whenever we need to communicate quickly about something. We also have the Marks radio system. These are in all of our front offices of our school buildings. Basically, it allows us to press a button and have immediate communication with first responders. We also have a PA system to use for announcements related to any safety concerns. Obviously, they're used for daily announcements, but we do rely on them if we have any situation that needs to be addressed. Any employee can also use the phone to make an announcement in an emergency situation. They can initiate medical emergency response team. We have been replacing our PA systems. In fact, the elementary school should be replaced in the next couple of weeks. We've had some failures in that area because of the age of the equipment. We replaced the middle school last summer. And I would just like to ask the board if they have any questions about any of our safety plans or safety items or any thoughts that they'd like for me to take back to our safety committee when we meet on the 4th.
Tanya, thanks for the report. You mentioned the active shooter training, and you referenced that we've done it 7/12. Are we not doing it K-6? If not, what's the rationale?
We do the training K-6, but it doesn't look the same for the younger kids.
We don't want to scare the kids, but we want them to understand what their response should be. So it does look different.
That's what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anybody else with questions? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'll be up again in a few minutes.
You are actually right now. Transition and move on. All right.
Now I get to talk about food.
Yes. So I will start to tee you up for this next report. The Wellness Committee update. If you remember, several months ago, we had a couple of community members come and talk a little bit about food in the classroom and through public comment. And I was directed to, involve them in the student wellness committee that is active and continuing to be active, that Tanya facilitates. So this presentation is a result of that committee working over the last couple of months to make some some proposed policy revisions. As you know, with any policy decision, there's a first reading, a second reading, and then an action item. This is just an informational session for you as a board.
Okay, thank you. So as I said, now we're going to be talking about food, changing the gears, but we're still talking about safety. And our wellness committee has been meeting this year to review our student wellness program. And our main focus has been to promote healthy living, obviously, and student safety. We have met 3 times, and we have, I have 2 of my members here tonight. I have Marie and John Bishop, so thank you for coming to support our recommendation to the Board of Education. During our meetings, we took some time to do an analysis of our current policy, which the last revision was in 2012. We did what we called a SWOT analysis, which was to look at the strengths, weaknesses, obstacles, and threats. However, I like to call the threats challenges. I just don't like the word threats. It sounds intimidating. So I'm just going to name a few of those that we identified. Strengths. Some of the strengths of our current plan is that it promotes healthy learning environment. It did improve the healthiness and quality of food that students were served, and it also focused on nutrition. Some weaknesses. We felt that the policy needed a list of healthy snacks, and then we also felt that the rewards incentives should not be food-based. We also felt that the plan had opportunities for growth. We felt that it could do a better job of teaching long-term healthy eating habits, and that we could provide parents better notification about foods being in the classroom so that they could plan alternatives for those times. We also thought some challenges would be for the enforcement of policy across the district and also communication. Based on that, a much longer list from our analysis, we developed some of these policy revisions and some ideas for implementing the policy. We felt that it would be important to include the policy in student handbooks, also to communicate the policy quarterly in principal and teacher newsletters, to make sure that we share a list of healthy snacks with parents and house that on our website, provide suggestions for alternatives to activities that typically focus on food, also provide a consistent message across the district through work with the leadership team. Here's an overview of the recommended changes. I'll just read through these. We removed the part that talks about one sweet treat for classroom parties. We removed, I feel like Ryan Bernath saying real world. We removed food as a reward or incentive. We moved the language around so that it was a better understood policy. There were some contradictions we felt in the 2012 version. We updated some suggestions for ways to celebrate individual and or group parties. The committee will provide a list of healthy snack options. We added the 2 days for parent notification prior to food at special occasion, again, just to allow parents time to provide an alternative. We added that assignments associated with food should allow for alternatives for students with allergies. We added that non-food items for Valentine should be considered for Valentine's Day treats. Ideas that could go with their cards that they exchange would be keychains, pencils, or silly straws. We also put that Play-Doh, slime, and silly putty should not be in the classroom because those do contain gluten and are harmful to our students that have allergies. This by no means is an all-inclusive list, but it is a list of some healthy snacks that could be used in the classroom. What is highlighted here is a hyperlink to the Alliance for Healthier Generations, and it provides a calculator where you can enter information about what food item you might want to bring in, and then you'll be able to see if it meets the USDA's Smart Snacks in Schools nutrition standards. So I'm just going to click on it so you can see how simple it is to use. Just read the directions, and then you can say what your product is. So I'm going to say that we're going to bring in a snack. And I'm going to say that it's not any of those above. And that is a combination of a quarter cup of fruit and or vegetables. You can say true or false. I'll say false. And then you can enter the brand of the product. I did it earlier with Nabisco cookies, and they are not acceptable. So that sums up our policy recommendations for you. And if you have any questions or any thoughts that you'd like for me to take back to the committee, I'd like to entertain those.
You mentioned that this was a safety issue.
Yes.
And we are seeing more students reporting with specific food allergies.
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes. In fact, the CDC says that in the past 10 years that allergies have increased 18%, and that there are approximately anywhere between 4 to 6% of students across the country, so that would be also in our school district, that have food allergies. And we do have students with significant food allergies in our schools.
Okay, thank you.
So it seems like a lot of it was clarification and strengthening the existing policy. So
yes,
thank you for that work. I mean, this is something that we do with these policies like every 5 years, and so we were due for a review.
Yes.
This year for this policy, right?
Yes.
Do you want to ask your question? Because you asked me the question. I can't remember. All right, I would ask it. I guess let me take a stab at it, and then are we limiting what an individual parent can send with their child for their snack?
The policy would say that anything that would come in would need to meet those guidelines. So yes, we would be limiting. The one sweet treat per occasion would not be a part of the policy any longer.
Okay, but that's for, I think, parties, right? Or is this everyday snack?
The everyday snacks now, would we be limiting that?
Yeah.
They should meet the guidelines.
Okay.
But they should meet the guidelines now, but that's also not policed.
Okay.
So it's not policed now.
For the snacks,
For the snacks, for an individual child, have their snack.
mid-afternoon, yes.
So the change that I saw indicated that that the teacher will assess if and when to offer snacks, but that's on a whole
More of a
separate-
special occasion, not the daily snack that parents send with kids.
Got it. Okay. And on the issue of removing the one sweet treat, which we implemented a couple of years ago, is that continuing to present a problem in the classrooms? Is that why it's being removed?
It is my understanding from the administrators that were on our committee that yes, that's continuing to be a problem.
Okay. No other questions.
Okay, thank you.
Okay,
Thanks.
thank you. So we're going to move to public comment?
Yes, we are.
Okay.
Are there any other,
No.
do you need this?
No, thank you. We are now at the portion of our agenda where we open the podium for public comment. If you would, please step to the podium, state your name and address, and please, there are a lot of folks I think here tonight who'd like to comment. If you would, please limit your comments to 3 to 5 minutes. And direct them.
Because there are so many people, would you like me to keep 3-minute clock just as a
courtesy?
As a courtesy.
Thank you. Thank you. Go ahead.
My name is Stephanie Hauser, and I live at 329 West Park Street. And last Wednesday, Granville High School and Middle School students organized and participated in the National School Walkout, which was a national movement to end school violence. Students left their classroom and walked outside for 17 minutes as a call to action for legislative and social reform. I was involved in the production of the walkout, and I'm proud to say the walkout allowed many students to recognize the importance of civic participation and motivated them to actively start seeking the changes they wish to see. We were able to collect over 60 voter registration forms and 50 personal letters addressed to U.S. senators. The event cultivated an atmosphere of support, which I believe empowered students to have the conviction and confidence to speak out for what they believed in. We are proud to be part of a school community of such mutual respect, affirmation, and encouragement of student initiative. This walkout was a way to unite students to make a change. This is a nonpartisan issue. This is us, the students of America, wanting to come to school every day and not be scared for our lives. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
My name is Christine Junior at 681 West Broadway. I'm actually a teacher at the elementary school, and I just had a question actually to address about the wellness committee. I guess my question was, what teachers are on the committee? As a teacher, I don't understand how we are expected, while we're teaching the standards, how we're supposed to police the snacks that are brought into our classrooms every day. And if I'm supposed to be teaching reading, how I'm supposed to be taking snacks away from kids if it doesn't meet our wellness policy. My problem with that is my kids don't eat lunch till 12:30 every day. If it's my job then to take away their snack, so I'm supposed to say, now you don't have anything to eat because I'm not providing the snack for them. So if we're taking the one sweet treat away from the parties, for the 3 parties that we have a year, I'm just wondering why 3 treats a year has to be restricted when, as a parent, I know what my child eats every day. The parties are planned well in advance. It can be notified to all parents. When I have kids that have allergies, those parents have sent in other treats so that all students, their needs are always met. It just seems like now we're taking everything away, and as a teacher, it's now my job to also monitor what these students are eating, which that's not my job. So I just feel that as a teacher, our opinions are not heard ever, and this is just another instance of that.
Thank you. I can have Mrs. Sherburne submit the names to Ms. Jude that were on the committee.
Thank you.
My name is Julio Valenzuela. I live at 1359 Walsh Hill Road. 3 children in the school district currently. One graduated, the 4th one graduated last year. My question has to do with school safety, who's next to see the plan that the school currently has. However, I'm noticing that a lot of the local schools, the other county-wide school districts are implementing much stronger security measures for active shooter situations, such as armed personnel, and more of an enhanced perimeter for the classroom. And I'm wondering if that is something that the safety committee is evaluating as well. And as well, the other things that should be evaluated are some of the failures that went on in Parkland with the permitting of the sheriff's department and some of the lack of response at that point. I'm not sure if the school is in communication with the local law enforcement agencies to ensure that things like that do not happen. Also, any signs and anything we may have learned from the Parkland situation that we may be able to apply into our safety plan here at Granville.
Thank you. Anyone else?
On some of those topics, Dennis Bouchard, 327 East Broadway. Choosing a replacement school board member, even by consensus in executive session for affirmation at a later meeting, is a clear and unambiguous violation of Ohio Open Meetings Act. Those decisions and discussions are required by law to be made in public sessions and to be recorded in minutes that for someone not at the meeting can be read so people can understand the reasoning and the rationale behind the decision. I mean, I had no view on who you selected. I didn't know who was up for it, but it's a clear open meeting violation. It should have been done in public session.
Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to address you this evening. Lost my concentration after the snack list there. I've expressed my, I'm sorry, Frank Foster, sorry about that. There you go, off the concentration again. Snack, back to the snack thing. I've expressed my concern to Superintendent Brown and board members regarding the scheduled walkout. I do want to commend the superintendent that is responsible for keeping the kids safe during that whole thing. I think he did a nice job of the whole bus thing around there. I can't analyze it much better than that, but it appeared to be well thought out from that perspective. And I don't disagree with any of these fine students that are here tonight expressing their opinion. I appreciate the fact that they are doing that and commend you for it. My position is related to the school's position on allowing these things to take place. Those things that are at least perhaps not on the surface, because there's certainly no one who's against school violence. I can't imagine anyone in their right mind being against school violence, except there's acceptance of the shooters themselves, perhaps. But the underlying political overtones of the whole thing, which I think my statement is based upon the fact that, as I understand it at least, there was along the lines of maybe 20 to 25% participation level. It kind of speaks to the fact that it is a divisive issue and politically oriented. My request to the board would be that you consider not allowing these things to ever take place again for fear of a group with less than good alternatives, or motives rather, that would find a way to promote their own cause, or one of which none of us would necessarily agree with, or very few of us. Therein lies my concern, and also the fact that a small group of people who wanted a certain thing to take place in the middle of an educational session interrupted that educational session of the other kids who chose not to be there. I realize it's over at this point, and I'm not here to debate that portion of it, but only ask that that be considered, a policy be considered to address those things in the future.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm a teacher, so I'm going to use my teacher voice. I don't need the mic. My name is Mitch Lerner. I live like there. You can pretty much hit my house with a baseball. I want to address the same topic, and I want to commend the administration at this school for the way that they handled the walkout. And I do so for a couple different reasons. First, I acknowledge there's not a lot of options with regard to what you could have done. The Supreme Court in 1969 in the Tinker case was quite clear. Students do not check their First Amendment rights at the door. And unless their political speech is somehow fundamentally disrupted, which in this case it was not, there's not much that the school can do about it. And I applaud you for recognizing that. Beyond that, though, on a more positive level, I've got two larger issues. One is that, and I'm an educator, I think anyone who works in education can tell you that the best way to ensure a high-quality education isn't to quantify it in terms of number of minutes that students spend sitting at a textbook or listening to a teacher lecture. Part of it is creating a conducive learning atmosphere. And that kind of atmosphere is created when students feel engaged and welcome, as if their opinions matter, and they're not part of just a process of rote memorization. The day that there was the walkout, I would note one of my son's classes had, they called it Pennies for Pennies for Patients. It's a charity drive, and because the students had raised enough money, they didn't really do anything in class that day. And that's fine, and these things go on sometimes. And while it's easy to kind of poke fun at that and complain about it, the bottom line is it creates a long-term environment where the students want to come to school, where they feel welcome, where they're excited about what's going on. And I think the results at Granville speak for themselves with regard to the success that we've had. The biggest issue, though, is the question of what it means to get an education. There's a lot of reasons why we get a high school education, and there's a lot of things we expect from you as teachers. We expect our kids to learn to read and write. We expect them to be trained for a job or to go on to college. But more than anything else, I think the purpose of a high school education is to prepare the next generation to deal with the problems that they inherit. When a group of students sees a problem, and whether we adults agree or not, this generation sees this as perhaps the defining issue of their day, when they come together to make a political statement and they do it on a nonpartisan way that is not disruptive to the education system and is thoughtful and quick and efficient, I think not only is there nothing wrong with that, I think they should be applauded for it, and you as an administration should be applauded for encouraging it. So thank you, and thank you to all the students who put it together.
My voice isn't quite so loud, so I'm not making this. My name is Nick Maxwell, 124 Fairfax Court. I am a DHS senior and was one of the students who helped organize the walkout. There's been a lot of conversation around this, both in personal conversations I've had on Facebook, on several different pages. I'd like to address some of the specific issues that were mentioned here today and then also in previous times. Granville's motto is learning for life, and much like the previous speaker just referenced, learning civic engagement and learning how to effectively and with respect participate in the democratic process is something that's really, really essential. And for a lot of students that participated in this event, this was one of their first sort of forays into a way that they can channel their opinion and to be a part of a larger collective voice. That was something that I thought was really, really powerful and really, really important for sort of a lifelong education. We made sure very hard in all of our discussions with the administration. I really would like to thank the administration, Mr. Brown, Mr. Durst, everyone that worked with us on this to address all of our concerns, us working to also help maybe change our position to help address some of it. So in the end, we did come to a nice consensus with everything. Students that did not want to participate were not in any way affected by this. They were not forced to leave the classroom. Teachers were not forced to fundamentally change what they were doing. Any students that did miss class time made up the work later. It did not in any way impact the learning environment of the school. And I think the biggest takeaway from this was that in all of the organization, we really did try, and I think we succeeded in making sure this message was presented in a nonpartisan way. And what I mean by that is this was pure and simple a call to action by our generation, by students. This wasn't a call for a specific for political policy. Unlike what a lot of people seem to think, this wasn't some sort of bashing of the Second Amendment or of the NRA. This was simply students saying that this is a problem that we can't tolerate any longer and that we need people to start doing something about it. And so I think that it was really important that we were able to express that and that it would be really wrong to say in a school environment that you aren't allowed to express that fundamental concern that really affects more than anyone else the students in the school. We may not have created this problem, but at the end of the day, we are the generation that grew up and is participating in these school shooting drills. This is a reality that we live every single day. and we finally decided that we need to say something. I think that's something that's really, really important and it's really essential. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Brett Black, 2579 Pleasant Crest Court. I've got a couple of requests for public information for you guys. It's got my contact information to send it to you. Thank you. I decided to come in today because, unlike a couple speakers here today, which everybody's obviously entitled to their opinion, I disagree, and I feel like the administration has allowed two things that I disagree with in the school walkout. Number one would be a direct violation of their own rules that they themselves have set vis-a-vis attendance. So allowing students to dictate to them how it would happen, while I recognize and appreciate and applaud your intent of keeping our kids safe. I just think that setting a precedent of allowing the students to circumvent the rules by simply saying that they're going to do so is a bad precedent to set. Also, I think that politics was allowed into our school system. The reason I say that is because the group that nationally organized this march is a political organization with clearly stated goals. Two of which, one of which would be gun control advocacy, which some of us here would disagree with. The second one would be, one of their stated goals would be to object to any legal or any policy that would support hardening of our schools for security purposes for our kids, which I wholeheartedly disagree with. Really appreciate the security overview you guys did. I do have some questions there. One of the requests for public information was related to the security protocols that you have in place. So I really appreciate that. And how long does it typically take to get responses and documentation?
It just depends on the amount of work it takes to put it together.
Yeah.
Okay. Let me make sure I got it. Yeah, and one last thing I just wanted to say is I feel strongly that it is our school's responsibility to observe neutrality in these situations. And while I definitely recognize that all students, all Americans, should be able to voice their opinions politically, I think that it's inappropriate to do so during school hours. I think, it would be more advisable to do that on your own time after school. And just want to say I enjoy our schools. I have 3 kids that currently attend schools, one that graduated here in 2015. And I just want to make sure that things are consistent across the board and that our schools remain neutral so that values can be taught at home and not pushed in our school system. Thank you.
Brett, I just want to make one clarification. I haven't read your request, but some of the security plan documentation is not subject to open records requests. So we'll do whatever we can that's been publicly released, but I just wanted to clarify that.
And I'm glad to hear you say that because obviously as parents, we like to see certain things, certain procedures exercised in a surprise. So, any other questions?
Thank you. Thank you.
My name is Jane Ludwig, and I live at 45 Birch Street. I am an educator, a grade teacher, and a parent of 2 students, current college students that went through 12 years at Granville, and my son is a junior. I wanted to talk about 2 things. The platform that these students chose was, in my mind, appropriate. They go to this school at least 40 hours a week. This is like their second home. As a teacher, I feel like a second parent to many of these children, all of these children that I have taught. When your home is threatened, how do you respond? They are speaking up for their right to feel safe in their second home, and the platform chosen, I believe, was appropriate. I'm with them, I back them on this. The second thing that I wanted to say was that many of these students, and I know that my son informed me of this at dinner on Monday night, before the actual walkout took place, that these students, and he was angry, he wanted to be punished for this. He wanted to walk out, he had planned to walk out, he loves school. He is a top-notch student, he loves his classes. Mr. Fisher, who was here previously, is his favorite teacher, one of his favorite. He doesn't even want to miss a minute. Tomorrow he's going to take the ACT. They're allowed to go home afterwards. He said, Mom, I'm not going home. I don't want to miss physics. I'm going to stay with physics. Mrs. McDonald's got something great going on. I'm like, great, Bjorn, but what's this feel about you want to be punished? That doesn't even make sense. No, because I feel strongly about this. This is important enough to me that I'm going to walk out of a school that I love my classes. I don't want to walk out of school. I don't want to skip school. I feel that the students, he said, we went to administration, said we're willing to take that time off of being tardy, as not being present. And I'm pretty sure after my daughter's college, Vassar College in New York, has posted also to students that walked out that they are willing to forgive any penalties against students, high school students that walked out because they were willing to speak up for something that was important. And so I know that certain, I don't know all colleges did that, but I know certain colleges said, we back you on this. School violence is an important thing to be concerned about, and so you should not be weary of any penalties from us. So I just wanted to clarify those two things, but I do feel like the platform was appropriate.
Thank you.
Excuse me. Hi, my name is Jennifer Valenzuela, 1359 Marshall's, Granville. I'd be all for a walkout, honestly, if it did any good. I want to know what good it's going to do. It was politically motivated, and that's just a fact. I'm concerned every day when I drop my kids off to school. I drop a 4th grader off. My son's a sophomore. I have another son who's a 7th grader, and my daughter graduated last year. And now she's at a university that is clearly unsafe as well. I want to know that my kids are going to come home, and I'm not going to get a dreadful call or an alarm on my phone that says there's been a school shooting. Our airports are safe. Our government buildings are safe. Why aren't our schools safe? There's so much that can be done. And if we're going to do a walkout, that's fine. Let's do a walkout, but let's have a result from it. What is the result? That's what I want to know. If we're going to do all of this time, all of this effort, Superintendent Brown, you're going to field all these phone calls from concerned parents, then it has to be for a reason. There has to be a tangible reason for this. I am demanding, as a taxpayer of this community, of somebody who sends my children to school every day, and I know that there's good teachers in the school. My kids have all had good teachers. I'm proud of the fact that I have moved my family out to this community. My husband and I worked really, really hard to live here, but I want our schools to be safe. That is my concern. Politics does not need to play a part at all. Just keep our kids safe. Thank you.
I'm Adrian Poldermasket. I live at 420 North Pearl Street. I'm going back a few speakers here. I just brought up that the school is violating or is allowing the violation of its own rules of attendance. And I would just like to say that the school, so the school allows for like field trips and stuff like that, which is also by that logic in violation of those rules. But this is an experience, it's like a learning experience that cannot be accomplished in the traditional classroom setting. And this walkout is also a learning experience that cannot be accomplished in the traditional classroom setting. So I don't see how letting students go out for a walkout, it's not that much different from letting students go out for a field trip, which is also a learning experience. So that's the main reason of that.
Thank you.
My name is Julia Lerner. I'm an alumnus from Granville High School. I graduated in 2015. I live in Washington, D.C. now. I go to the University of Maryland. Part of what I do as a journalism major every day is cover political protests that happen on the street in Washington. And I'm so proud of all of the students that I've seen walk out. I'm really proud that my high school itself has students organizing this walkout. But I'd like to say, I don't think that students dying, I don't think children dying is a partisan issue. There should be no reason that I'm afraid to send my brother to high school. You don't see anything happening from it? You're not looking carefully then. You need to see that these students are rising up and saying that we are not going to let this happen again.
Thank you.
Hi there, my name is Nick Mensker. I'm a senior at Granville High School, and I'm one of the organizers of the walkout on the 14th. And I want to sincerely thank all of you who came here for discussion and debate and voice your opinions, and who have been doing so on Facebook and other channels for the past several weeks since the Parkland shooting. It's really important that communities in America have these discussions, because this is how we keep it on the forefront of our minds and how we continue working to solve these issues. So I think that it's important to state that every student in K through 12 who's under 18 today has never lived in a world before the Columbine shooting. Today we live in a country where school violence on a mass scale occurs on a regular basis, stays in the news for maybe 5 days, and then becomes a distant memory. As a student, this cycle is terrifying. The survivors of the recent Florida Parkland shooting feel similarly. They've been an inspiration to students and adults and myself that they've refused to let their lost peers be forgotten. I'm very proud to have helped to organize a walkout that remembered the Parkland victims and helped students to have a voice by registering voters. By the way, we registered 60 voters and sent around 50 letters to legislators. So this is kind of a tangible thing that we've done that's come out of our walkout. I want America to work together to quell this epidemic, and I think that's what the students want by coming together on a national scale on March 14th. We dominated the front page news, and I think that the tangible goal we want to accomplish is pressuring legislators into doing something to save our lives. They haven't at Columbine, they haven't at Newtown, but they will at Parkland, or else there will only be another one. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jake Nag, 2584 Upland View Court, and I just want to say that the high school students at Granville are amazing. You kids organize, and I don't think you're wearing elephants and donkeys. I think you're showing up for your own rights. My daughter was the same age as the kids that were shot and killed in Sandy Hook. And I just remember watching that and just crying for weeks. And here we are now, she's a 6th grader at the intermediate school, and we're more worried about people's rights than our kids being carried out of the school in body bags. We're more worried about giving our teachers guns and giving them paper and books and tools to teach our kids with. So I commend all these kids. I think you all are amazing. You're standing up and you're demanding that change happens. You know, we have a dog that gets put in an overhead bin. My husband, the pilot, I don't know why that happened. We haven't talked about it yet. They put a puppy in an overhead bin and it dies. So immediately somebody puts forth legislation. We're having 26 teachers and kids gunned down in Sandy Hook. Now 17 in Parkland. Where's our legislation? You know, I don't know what the answer is. I don't know if we want metal detectors. Do we want our kids, you know, going to school in a prison? I don't know what the answer is, but they make the big bucks and they need to figure it out. But I'm proud of you guys, and I'm to see you on Saturday.
Thank you.
I'd like to address the assertion that students should be forbidden or sheltered from divisive issues such as this. because this is just completely unrealistic and detrimental for real world application of education taught in these schools, for example, in government class about processes and privileges of participation in democracy. And then to address concerns about the work of the walkout, this was a very positive step for conversation regarding what changes students would like to see and how they want to accomplish it. Because these conversations that were generated, I've noticed have continued far past the day of the walkout. And then also just the fact that many students were able to register to vote and contacted their representatives is an example of students taking an active role in the participation in their government, which in my opinion has a lot of work. To conclude, I'd like to read an excerpt from the United Nations Human Rights Treaty called the United Nations Convention on the Right of the Child, a treaty that the U.S. signed in 1995. The Convention on the Rights of the Child recognizes that children are not merely passive recipients entitled to adult and adult care. Rather, they are the subjects of rights. Governments are obliged to fulfill, protect, and respect the right of children to assert their views as individuals and as constituency in all manners that concern them, and have them taken seriously. The Committee on the Rights of the Child has stressed the right to participate applies to all children who can form views, however young, and it applies to all areas of their lives, from the family, school, local community, and public services. Participation is thus a fundamental right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Kieran Sullivan, 443 High Banks Valley Court. Technically not Granville Park Trails, but in the township, so it's fine. I'm a senior at Granville High School, and I just wanted to come up here. I wanted to commend a lot of the actions that were taking place, of course, in the walkout. The moment I turned 18, I went online and I tried to submit my voter's registration form so that I could actually participate in the fall 2017 election. Unfortunately, due to some complications, they never got my form, and I was relatively put down, and that just put a general sense of disinterest and distrust in a lot of of what the bureaucracy necessarily stands for. Now, so with the walkout and the way that was conveyed, I felt that I, as a student, was actively able to, as stated previously, stand up for something that I, would believe in, and it's a rightful cause. No one wants to see kids get killed. And I thought that the way that it was conveyed was in a nonpartisan way. The voter registration forms that they were able to collect, they were put in locations like the lunchroom and the study hall room, and they were out of the way. If you were interested, you could go up and you could fill out the form yourself, and also a letter. It was not, you did not have to actively walk out to get this form, and if you did not do that, but you were still interested in registering to vote, you could still do that, and I commend them for that. My sister didn't go on the walkout because she was working on homework, but she's able to vote, so that was fine. And then I thought that from what I've heard, at least the discussions that the school board had with the students that actually, worked it out was done in a rightful manner. It really helps to not convey the sense that this is some sort of bizarre authoritarian government. They're not oppressing students for what they believe in. This isn't Tiananmen Square. That's good. Now, and then also with the idea that the protest doesn't inherently bring out direct results, and rightfully so, people want to have answers want something to be done. The inherent purpose of a protest is that it is a much more slightly indirect way of bringing about change. Students who participated in the 1969 Tinker case with the armbands, they didn't expect that their cause would be heard directly a year after concerning the Vietnam War. And they knew that, and they took it for the long run, and eventually some change was made. And with the way that was done, I think that could probably happen. Yeah, that's it.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak?
I'm Vivendra Lele, 113 Chapin Place. Is this on?
Yes.
Yeah.
Right, good. Just a couple of quick things. I want to thank the board for recognizing something that the students, I think, recognized early on. You know, it's interesting, most of the students here are in their political minority. That is, they don't have the franchise. They're not in the political majority the way I and some other students might be. So they're not really political actors the way that I and other students might be. And so curiously, the kind of civic action that they engage in, this is the kind of civic action that they're able to engage in. And so it's sort of ironic. I know some have said that this was a decidedly sort of political affair, political demonstration, but curiously, they're not necessarily political actors, again, the way that I am. And the issue, as far as I know, hasn't been raised to the level of federal political policy yet, or public policy yet. So curiously, when those say, you know, it was a political event, ironic, sometimes irony is funny, sometimes it's sad and pathetic. In this case, it's the latter. But curiously, the issue is actually not political. And I think the students are drawing attention to the fact that that's the problem, right? And so that's the first thing I would remind people. And then the second thing, actually, the two other things, I'll be as quick as I can, is that they were doing it as students in school, right? So this was not an extraneous sort of external affair. The violence they were sort of drawing attention to, grimly, so the grim reality is that that violence has become part of their curriculum. And so actually, you know, I know some have said that this should have been dealt with sort of externally, extramurally, extracurricularly, but it's part of the curriculum. And so it had to be done by students in school because they were addressing an issue that was directly tethered to the conditions of them being students in school. So while some might think that there is a sort of a slippery slope towards other things, this issue was about the very conditions, the conditions of possibility for them to be students in school. And so it made sense, actually, that it was students in school addressing, again, an issue that makes it possible or makes it not possible for them to be students in school. I just wanted to sort of lay that logic there because it's pretty intact, right? And then the third thing I just want to say is I want to thank Mr. Durst and Mr. Brown for engaging with the students the way that they did. You know, I was among those initially who thought that there should have been some sort of consequence, some penalty. That is, you know, students walk out of class and there's a sort of a rule that is violated. There should be some sort of consequence that sort of flows effortlessly, right? That's what I initially thought. But they took a much more difficult task. That is, they took seriously the pedagogical and educational responsibility that they have to students. That is, every encounter, every engagement with the student is an opportunity for students to learn. I'm a professor, and I don't do that all the time, I'm embarrassed to say. And so I actually learned something from this process. They could have done something very easy, that is applied axiomatically, a rule, a consequence, right? But they did something more difficult, right? Applying a rule axiomatically is comforting because it's quick, it's efficient, but like deductive reasoning, you learn nothing from it, right? From deductive logic, you actually learn nothing new. But they took the more difficult task of making the students think, making them defend a position with empirical facts, and making them argue for something. Right? That's much more difficult, but it's actually more pedagogically responsible because the students grew and they learned. And that really is their obligation. So I want to thank Mr. Brown, I want to thank Mr. Durst for forcing the students to think in ways that wouldn't have been possible otherwise had a rule just been axiomatically applied. So thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Would anyone else like to speak during public comment? No? Last chance. Okay. We will then close public comment, which takes us to the next portion of the board meeting, which is a board discussion, where the board typically engages in an open discussion on issues before the board. One of the things that we had identified tonight is the safety discussion. It's not limited to the safety discussion, but I will open it up to the board for discussion for anyone who has comments or wants to address any of the issues.
First, I'd just like to thank Tanya for the report on the school safety. It was been a little while since we've sort of really understood everything that's entailed in our safety plan. And, you know, for those who don't know, I mean, the plan is, you know, hundreds of pages long. So it's quite the endeavor. And so we do take our role in keeping our students safe very seriously. In terms of, I think we need to talk about, there's been a lot of discussion here and about the walkout. So I think we need to take some time to talk about that. I thank everybody for coming and expressing your opinions very, what I'm looking for, congenially. And I think we had a lot of positions stated. Thanks to the students for coming and really describing what it meant to you to do this. I'm going to just say I support your efforts. I think it was important that it happened during the school day for the reasons the last gentleman just said. This is directly related to their beings and their existence as a student. And so I sort of felt like it, you know, and as Mrs. Ludwig said, it was the appropriate platform for this to happen in. So I'm going to just throw those 2 cents out there. But I do thank everybody for coming and listening, and public discussions like this, I think, are important for us to come up with resolutions for something that is really very important, the safety of our students in schools. It's not something that I think our students should ever have to really deal with, but they do, and it's sad and it's scary. And again, and some of the outcomes clearly are we're still talking about it, so that's an outcome. Students are ready to vote, so that's an outcome. They've written to legislators to keep this movement going, so that's an outcome. So I do feel like this effort of theirs has had direct, has resulted in lots of positive things moving the issue forward. So, just to comment on a few of the things that came up this evening.
I would also like to, Mr. Valenzuela mentioned, you know, some of the things that other school districts are doing. April 4th, our safety committee is getting together to talk about a variety of different topics. So I just wanted to, you know, let him know that that was going to take place. All of our first responders are a part of that committee. We have a couple of national experts that live in Granville that are part of that committee. So a lot of topics will be discussed and shared and kicked around like they always are, based on the latest and greatest information about school safety. So I just wanted to highlight that for him.
I'm glad you brought that up. I think we'd probably like to have a report back to us after that April 4th meeting, or next board meeting. Clearly there's different context for that discussion. So if we can put that on the agenda and make sure we have a report.
In April, for sure. Okay. Yep.
I'll say that kind of one thing that I've kind of been enlightened to as a board member, you see a little bit more communications, you hear kind of a bit more behind the scenes, is like the extreme emphasis that we have on safety. And Jeff, I know that's like a huge priority to you, and I can feel that, you know, in all of your decisions and as a primary guiding force for our organization, and I really thank you for that. Another, you know, important thing that you brought to us also is the mentality of continuous improvement, though, right? And, you know, school safety is absolutely a top priority, but I think we always need to revisit all of our policies as we do on a regular basis and think about what's next. And I don't have any preconceived notion about the right next steps to take in the context of what's happened recently or in the context of our community, but I'm really encouraged that we have, again, fantastic community partnerships, and we have mechanisms in place with our safety committee. And, you know, like you said, Russ, I'm looking forward to hearing that update. And I'm open to whatever suggestions are, best practices that we can bring in from other places and the things that we can draw up in our community. So I feel great sending my kids to school every day. But I know that's not just something that you do once. It's something you continue to revisit. And I think in the context of our community, we're looking forward to supporting the best recommendations we can going forward.
Welcome to your first meeting.
You haven't had any background in this, so don't feel compelled.
Yeah. Oh, I don't. You did this before me.
With respect to Mr. Kuchan's objection to our selection and our process, we had several special meetings scheduled. At the end of our most recent special meeting, we actually did come out of executive session and have a public discussion. And that's when we made the candidate selection. So it was not in violation of Sunshine Law. Pardon? We recorded it.
Could we mention also the background that we did to ensure that our process was appropriate? I was not partly directly involved with that, but we did quite a bit of research in the process of understanding how best to select a board member. That included, reviewing with the Ohio School Boards Association and other organizations to ensure that we had the best process. And I would say that we didn't feel that, brief, few-minute long public presentations or interviews were the most appropriate, because this was a decision we took very significantly, and we wanted the extended time with each one of the candidates and time to deliberate amongst ourselves to make sure that we did the best. And it was a difficult decision, but I think the process that we followed was one that I'm proud of, the outcome as well.
I share that. I'm very comfortable with what we did. Thank you, all of you. And I should have said this earlier before some of the folks here left. It takes some effort, it takes some conviction, it takes some risk to get up in public forums like this and state a position, no matter what the position is. And one thing that I think we all know on this board is that we have a community that cares. A community that takes very seriously what we all view as our obligation to provide a safe and outstanding learning environment for our children. It's why we live here, every single one of us. So thank you all for expressing your opinion, and I'm especially gratified that there are a number of students here who can observe and participate firsthand in a process where people can express their opinions without attacking each other, unlike what we see on television, on commercials, on the news, coming out of Washington, D.C. So I commend each and every one of you for the respect that you showed, for the thoughtfulness that you showed, for the consideration that you showed. To me, that's one of the great benefits that comes out of a discussion like this. And I think we have to keep talking to each other, not at each other, because this is a complex issue that has confounded our country for a while now. Going back, certainly before then, but 1999 was Columbine. We haven't come up with a solution for it yet, or the political will to find a solution for it yet. So I would encourage everyone to keep the conversation going. Let me speak first of all about our commitment to safety, and then secondly, specifically about the walkout. Our commitment to safety is full and complete. And it's unwavering, and the administration lives that every single day. They spend more time worrying about the safety of students and staff than anything else, which, if you think about it, is a double-edged sword. We'd like them to be able to spend more time thinking about the education of students. They do a lot of that too, but the safety issue is primary. There are a lot of things that we do within the district that, some of which Ms. Sherburne spoke about tonight, others we don't disclose. We spend time, we spend money, we spend effort training, we spend opportunities working with law enforcement, we spend time bringing in folks from outside the community and from inside the community on the safety committee. And there are things that we as a board will want that group to continue to look at. Whether it's increasing security in the buildings, doors and windows, whether it's increasing cameras in the buildings, additional and perhaps more informed training on active shooter situations, contemplating the presence of security officer or service officer or Granville PD officer in the building. I think that the board would say, and I don't intend to speak for everyone on this board, so folks may not agree with me, but I think what we want is for our safety committee to look at all those things and to consider all those things and be willing to propose solutions. I think more critically, and this is not just the safety committee's responsibility, it's all of our responsibilities, and it's something we've been working on within the classroom, within the school buildings themselves. We have to look at the underlying issue here, which is mental health. We have to really be better. Every one of us be better at ferreting out issues of illness that may be evident sometimes, may be less evident sometimes, may fester until there's a situation like they had in Parkland. Clearly, as Mr. Valenzuela pointed out, we know from media reports there seem to have been ample opportunities to intercede there, and yet it didn't happen. It's imperative that we make sure that doesn't happen here in communities around the country. We can make sure the same thing. So we need to work on that. We have an initiative that the board has sponsored this year on well-being, on wellness for students. And it is to consider everything that enters into that broad definition. But each one of us as parents, as members of the community, as staff, students, needs to be sensitive to the issues that give rise to violence in schools. And we have to stop it. We have to be better at identifying threats before they become active. We should think about earlier screening for depression. The AMA came out recently and recommended that in 12-year-olds. We should think about how we do that. We should consider whether there's a way to effectuate that. We need to improve our training for staff and students, not just on active shooter drills, but on spotting problems in advance. We really have to focus on the underlying cause. And the reason is, and we all know this, we could have an unlimited budget, you still can't harden the school enough. There is no way, frankly, to put a bubble around our schools, around our bus stops, our school buses, our children on the playing field, our children at recess, our children traveling through town. There's no way. If there were, we would have done it. And other districts would have done it too. So while we as a board, I think, have to continue to demand, and you should demand of us, that we think of as many options as we can to enhance student safety, we also all have to realize that, that there are limitations to that. We need to stop the active shooter before he or she arrives on the school campus. We need to stop it before that person ever picks up a gun. And that's all of our obligations. I'm going to speak for myself a little bit here on two issues. One, on the walkout. I recognize that there are different views on the walkout and what we should have done. I would dispute completely the view that as a school board, as a school administration, as a school body, that we caved in to anyone here. What the administration did is exactly what I think they should have done. In the face of a strong interest from students to gather and demand an end to school violence. And that's, make no mistake, that's exactly what that event was. The posters that were put up were eventually taken down at the direction of the administration. Posters were put up, admittedly, were printed, at least, it seems, by a group that had a political interest. The point of the whole event was made clear by the poster, which was a demand an end to school violence. That's not political. Politics means there's opposing views. I recognize here that there's no one in this room, there's no one in this community that has an opposing view to demanding an end to school violence. We may have different ways that we think that could be addressed. We may disagree about how that can be addressed. But there's no one that seriously contemplates an opposing view to an end to school violence. So I will reject the notion this was a political event. It was an exercise in free speech. I'm proud of the students for organizing. I'm proud of them for their willingness to listen to the concerns of the administration with respect to their safety, with respect to minimizing the disruption in the school day. I thank them for that. I think that was quite responsible. But I think they did what they should have done. I think they did what students back in 1963 did, children did in the Birmingham Bus March, when they demanded an end to violence, racial violence. I think there have been examples throughout history where people protested, where people stood up and made their views known. And that led to change. It doesn't lead to immediate change, unfortunately, but it leads to change. And so I'm thankful that it happened. I appreciate the work that went into it. Mr. Durst and the folks at the high school, Mr. Brown, the administration. It took a lot of time, it took a lot of thought, it took a lot of collaboration and effort in order to make this occur without disrupting the school day, without putting anybody at risk. And the students, as I understand it, wasn't fair. Conducted an event where everyone was welcome to get up and speak their piece, no matter what their political views might have been. So thank you for that. A couple of you commented about voting. What you did with that protest was significant. It was really significant. Now you have to vote. There are different views, of course, of how we address the situation in this country, but ultimately it's going to be legislative action. And legislators pay attention to people who vote. It's not about how much money you give, it's not about how many rallies you go to, it's whether you vote, and whether you vote every single time there's an election. So when you're old enough, register and vote, and be heard. There was a comment about arming staff in addition to hardening our campuses. And you've heard what I have to say about hardening the campuses. I think we will do everything we can, but I think we all must recognize the limitations of that. And I'm speaking for myself only because the board has not discussed this. I would not be in favor of arming staff. I do not see it as a viable, safe way to address school shootings. I think the evidence against arming staff is overwhelming. And we've prided ourselves on making decisions here based on data, based on hard data. If arming more people was the way to stop shootings, we wouldn't have any shootings because we're the most well-armed country in the world by multiples, significant multiples. So I don't think putting more guns in the schools is a solution. I'm concerned about how we would then analyze and assess candidates for teaching spots. Do we start evaluating people based upon their marksmanship skills? Do we start retaining teachers who may or may not be what we want based on their marksmanship skills? Do we ensure that teachers have the guns on their persons at all times so that they're never left where someone else can get them? I'm also convinced, and in full disclosure here, I've been a gun owner much of my life. I grew up learning how to use guns. I grew up hunting for pheasant and quail, for ducks and deer. I'm not afraid of guns, and I don't have guns. But we're not talking about those kind of guns here. We're talking about the kind of guns that have one purpose, and it's to hunt humans and cause mass destruction. And an armed teacher with a handgun, no matter how skilled, no matter how well intended, no matter how prepared that teacher is likely to be overmatched. There was an interesting statistic that I read just this last week. The New York City Police Department has about 36,000 police officers. Highly trained, highly experienced, highly skilled. And the statistics there indicate that when an officer on duty discharges his or her gun in New York over the last period of time, and I can't tell you whether it's the last 5 years, 10 years, or what, but it's reported to be a meaningful amount of time. But they hit their target 1/3 of the time. So imagine, if you will, a school shooting event where we're expecting a teacher who's not a professional law enforcement officer to step into a crowded hallway, identify who the shooter is, and discharge his or her weapon in order to neutralize the shooter. I don't think that's a solution. I don't think that's a meaningful solution or a reasonable solution at all. So I'm not in favor of arming teachers. I think we have to start getting to the root of the problem, as we talked about, on mental health issues. We have to start thinking about how we balance as a community, as a country, how we balance the rights of individuals versus our right to send their kids to school and keep them safe. I don't want to make this a debate about the Second Amendment, the right to bear arms. I'm happy to have that discussion if anybody would like. That's not what this is. This is about protecting these young people. This is about putting an end to the violence. The 17 lives lost at Parkland, 26 lives lost at Sandy Hook, 15 lives lost at Columbine, 3 lives lost at Chardon a few years ago. Does anybody here even remember that in January of this year, before Parkland, in January of this year, there was a school shooting in Kentucky and 2 students were killed? That went way over. It just disappeared because it wasn't big enough, and then Parkland came along. And every time this happens, we say the same thing, go through the same ritual. We offer thoughts and prayers, we offer remembrances, we say we need to do something about this. We say we shouldn't make it political, we say anything we want to say. And if you're honest as parents, you do what I do, which is you give thanks every time that happens, and it didn't happen in our community to our kids. But the one thing we know, without question, is if we keep doing what we're doing, if we don't make meaningful change, this will happen again and again and again. And every time it happens, that means somebody's prayer that it doesn't happen to their kids wasn't answered. That's not acceptable. That should never have been acceptable. These young people are telling us it is not acceptable, and they're demanding we do something about it. I think it's incumbent upon us to figure that out. So I applaud you for what you did. I thank you all for being here tonight. Thank you all for caring about what goes on in our schools and our kids. Thank you. So, with that, I think we will move into the reading of the board policy. So what I would do, that would be the end of our board discussion tonight. Unless you want to listen to the reading of the board policy, I would invite you.
Wait a minute, my wife's even in. Run now. Run now.
He'll be home by 1 or 2.
Yeah.
So glad he joined you.
I know. Sorry, Dan. Don't worry, it's gonna be very.
Thanks for being here.
Yes, thanks for being here.
Great job, too.
Thanks for reading it.
Great job at States.
Thank you.
All right, so I had a PowerPoint, but all it did was list the different policies, so I'm just going to read off the OSBA PDQ, which is the governing body that talks about board policy changes. So I'm just kind of run through the list of things that are on that list that we must adjust to. Honestly, nothing is of significance. I say that, then I'll say something significant. So the first couple we've actually addressed already. The first one is the business advisory councils, where we have signed a resolution with the Licking County ESC and the entire county for them to host our business advisory council. The policy was just late coming because of the legislation being introduced late as well. The next two items are emergency management and safety plans. Those new policies get implemented probably every 6 months as Homeland Security adjusts their practices. So we're just catching up to that. Tanya kind of alluded to some of the changes that are coming, and those are referenced in the board policy update. Drug testing for district personnel required to hold a CDL, a commercial driver's license. There was a tweak for follow-up testing on that policy, so that is in place. The policy JECAA, which is the admission of homeless students, and the regulation that accompanies that, is also been revised a couple of different times in the last 3 years. It's all based on the McKinney-Vento Act that governs how we respond to homeless children. Ryan Bernath is our homeless student liaison, and I have to tell you, if there's one thing that flies completely under the radar, is when a student is deemed homeless, the lengths that we take to keep them engaged in school. And Kim Clary, one of those obligations is to provide transportation. Kim Clary goes above and beyond to make sure that transportation is not a barrier to those students or parents. So I'd just like to throw that in as a kudos to her. And then student absences and excuses. With the implementation of House Bill 410, the definition of excused absence has been modified. And so we're updating that language, not only in this board policy, but then we'll do an adjustment to our handbook language in our next month's handbook.
What's the change?
It's all definition of what is excused. It's just different language. Like,
The principles are the same? I mean, like the ideas are the same, it's just changing the language? Okay.
Yes, exactly. If you want my analysis of it, it expands it a little bit so that a definition of an excused absence is a little bit broader. Because now districts are getting challenged on their unexcused and excused absences in totality. I think what you'll see is 410 will be modified in the future just for unexcused absences.
Hopefully that'll help us a little bit. I've had a lot of parents approach me with concerns specifically about truancy and issues that they've received based on the communication they've had and so forth, right? With like honest concerns about the kids just been out sick a couple of days, are you really gonna come and have a problem or something like that? So
and
maybe this will help.
We are required by law to notify them after 7 absences that they are, on watch, so to speak. And we try and soft sell that letter, but, you know, as a parent who received one myself,
Well, because there are legitimate reasons why your kids are out, so it doesn't matter if it's,
Yeah, and unfortunately, the law does not delineate between excused and unexcused enough. And, you know, when you have a student that potentially is at the James undergoing cancer treatment, and, you know, we are providing education down there, they are still considered, it's still considered an absence in the eyes of that law. And so those are the things that need to be tweaked. And then the only other thing that I would reference that is on the list is our tobacco policies and school tobacco policies. We are actually one of 3 school districts in the state, in Lincoln County, that has 100% passed the Lincoln County Health Department's zero tobacco on school property for staff and for students. Our policies have already passed, so these are almost moved. So that is it. The only other thing that I would say is in the future with the student wellness update that was provided, at some point a policy will be coming that aligns with some of the recommendations that you've heard. Any questions for me?
No.
No.
Place cleared out, didn't it?
Yeah. They heard you were gonna get up there and say something.
Yeah, exactly.
Even Mike.
Yeah. Treasurer go.
I guess they're not so interested in board policy.
So board reports, next, I'll kick it off. Just briefly on the Economic Sustainability Initiative. As we've discussed in the past, the Economic Sustainability Ad Hoc Committee that was formed, the Village Council, the Township Trustees, the GRD, and the school board hasn't met in a while. There have been sort of subsets of that group that have met first to deal with plans to try and address potential development down in South Cherry Valley. I think that group has finished its work. I don't think there's anything new coming there. There's an active group now dealing with South Main Street and the replacement of the bridge on 37 that ODOT will start next year. The widening of the bridge and what it means for traffic coming in to and out of Granville. And as part of that, there are some ongoing discussions about planning for future development on Weaver and in that immediate area. We're still talking about the bridge. We're not really talking about development yet, so I'll report back when we are. But plans are in place for the infrastructure at least to support some movement.
Thanks for being involved.
Yeah.
So there's been a lot of activity going on. I'm going to give a CTEC update. I sit on the CTEC board as our representative. So there's been a lot of action going on with CTEC and what we're doing and collaborations and things like that. So I just wanted to sort of point out everything where it is and sort of give just an overall update. So there's 2 initiatives that we've been working on with them. One is our IT pathway. And students during scheduling were able to choose from web design, game design, programming, AP computer science principles, and computer and mobile apps. And so those were the courses that will be happening next year. And then also the business pathway has been approved. And students were able to choose from strategic entrepreneurship, marketing, business management, and personal finance management, which is the class that takes place of financial literacy. So those things are all in place, and students will be able to take advantage of all of those opportunities next year. I get the applications for interested business candidates were due last week, and Granville and CTEC will be collaborating on hiring that person. So it's, I just felt like so much was going on. I just wanted to solidify where we are. And then at our meeting last month, 2 Granville students from the IT program came and spoke to us. They were rather impressive, I have to say. It was Daniel Abdel Samed and Burke Abbott. Daniel presented on an app that was used during the marching band's trip to the Outback Bowl, where they were able to post photos and updates and schedule changes, and only those people who subscribed to the service were able to use the app, but he's since been approached to actually make that more widely available, so as a business opportunity. And then Burke Abbott presented on a website that he's doing for a local organization. I can't remember which one, but and so both of those things are happening in class and because of the computer classes that they're taking. And then Dr. Mulaney told me that both students are now meeting with the Licking County Chamber to discuss potential job opportunity to create an app for the Young Leaders of Licking County group. So we got a lot of opportunities coming out of.
Can they come help me with, like, turning on my phone?
Yeah, so it's kind of exciting, like that this is, they're doing great stuff.
Every time I walk into Ryan's classroom, Daniel and Burke are like, come on over here, I gotta show you what I'm working on. I have no idea what they say because they're speaking a completely different language, but it's super cool.
Yeah.
And really, they're both entrepreneurs right now. They are selling their service to community members that need it. Some of them are nonprofit, but some of them are for-profit entities that love what they're doing. And I think that, that other pathway where you talk about strategic entrepreneurialism and social entrepreneurialism, that's a significant benefit to our students. And remember, that was a reallocation of a current program that we thought would be better aligned with some of the things that our students say that they want to have experience in. It's also giving us an opportunity to use the space that was previously used by FCS for more of our students that need functional living skills through MH units and other class opportunities. So we're really maximizing both the space and the position to, I think, align with the best practices. I got to give Joyce, Stephanie, Ryan, Matt kudos on making this work. Because we have to, there's a financial implication, but then there's also a logistical, educational aspect to these conversations, and they really go at it for what's in the best interest of students, and then how do we palette what has to happen, in both of our budgets. But they do a fantastic job. Stephanie and Joyce and CTEC as a whole is a gem.
Absolutely.
So we're lucky to have them in our county.
It's, it's fairly unique, I think, partnering that's going on.
Yes.
I think that the state would like to see anyway, but I just think it's unique, and we're doing what's best for our students. And for sure. Yeah. I wouldn't mind having Burke and Daniel come present here at some point.
They will blow your mind.
Yes, they will. So it would be worth having them.
Now, Daniel will tell you that we've kind of handcuffed him because he challenges our infrastructure and our security. So I know he will tell you, just take the handcuffs off and look what I can do.
Using all the bandwidth.
Yes, exactly.
Thank you. A quick update on the Granville Education Foundation. There was a good meeting recently with the impending change in leadership, and Wendy Patel, who served as president for the last few years, terms are expiring, and the group took that opportunity to have more of a strategic meeting instead of just an operational one. Really think more deeply and pose some questions about, like, are they headed in the right direction? Are they thinking of the right projects? Are they, fundraising in the right ways? And so I think it was a good chance for them to kind of step back from their operational things and think about that. I've been very pleased with what they've done with the alumni and more. I think there's also a lot more potential capacity that they could help serve in some way. And I think that it's good that they're asking themselves the question, should they consider reorganizing? Should they consider going after bolder projects? Should they consider going after more events and so forth? So it was a good meeting. I'm going to mention, just run through the current list of trustees, because if any of you happen to see them out and about, it's been a while since I've mentioned those names. Be sure and thank them. There are also 3 current openings, which they will be accepting resumes for. So Wendy Patel is stepping out as the president. Amy Parsley White, Amy Sanders, Amy Del Reinhardt, Brad Hislop, Christy Charvat, Dawn Eggleston, Debbie Thomas, James Madamo, Janice Larasso, Joe Johnson, Carla Shockley, Laura Amano, and Lee Heckman and Nate Wilson are all of our acting trustees. So again, see them, thank them for their work. And I was really excited they're really starting to think about this strategically instead of just the same old. And I'm not sure exactly where that'll end up, but hopefully it will be with some bolder opportunities for us.
I agree.
Well, they have our thanks and appreciation. Good, thank you. Move to the action agenda?
Yes, okay. Item 13.01, unpaid leave request.
So moved.
Second.
So notice the language is submitted in accordance with the collective bargaining agreement. This is something that is in the CBA that a teacher can request a leave of absence for up to a year.
And I think this is granting the request would be inconsistent with what we've done in the past
That would be correct.
for similar requests.
Yes.
Yeah. Can we explain why?
Sure.
Yeah.
So you will see later in the agenda, in the consent agenda, Megan's resignation. So they are moving to Texas. So she was hoping to have a year unpaid leave.
So it's a relocation intended to be a permanent relocation.
That is correct.
And in instances in the past when we've had staff who have made a permanent relocation, we have not committed.
Correct. That would require the district to hold their position for a year with no real commitment.
Conversely, when we've had staff members who have left to pursue academic opportunities or other opportunities with the intent of coming back after a year, we have.
Yes.
Granted.
That is accurate.
Not that it was intended to be a permanent relocation.
Correct.
So what's the point of requesting an unpaid leave if you don't have the intention of coming back?
Can that be a rhetorical question?
No.
I think it's a safety net.
Okay. I just didn't understand why. I mean, if you know you're not coming back, why you request it, or why is it in the collective
I think
bargaining
sometimes
agreement?
people get nervous with transitions and want a safety net.
Okay.
Dr. Corman?
No.
Mr. Miller?
No?
Ms. Dees?
No.
Mr. Wolf?
No.
Mr. Jennings?
No.
Thank you.
Just as new member. Just as new member.
1302.
I don't want my name.
Licking County ESC contract for 2018 and 2019.
So moved. Second?
Okay, this is our contract with the Licking County ESC for preschool, which is the funding flow agreement, preschool contract, and the special education and related services contract. What I'd like to do is just make sure, because we've had a couple of conversations about preschool recently. The ESC is under new leadership, Dale Llewellyn. Dale came in, he's been doing an analysis of their entire shop to see where we could trim cost. And the whole point of an ESC is to realize economy of scale and reduce cost for local districts. He has agreed to lower that rate by 15% for next year, with a commitment to continue to do that work of reducing cost. In the same breath, we are looking always for ways to bring those services either in-house or partner with another agency that could do it more cost effectively. So, but when you're transitioning services like a preschool, it's usually an 18-month process. And so it's not something that can be done overnight. So I am comfortable recommending that we approve these contracts.
And as part of that, we know that we'll continue to look at alternatives
Yes.
to gain cost efficiencies in what we do. Not any cut in services, but certainly an efficiency that hasn't been achieved with ESC in the last couple of years.
Correct.
This is a huge external cost for us, and I'm open to creative solutions, and I think partnering with other organizations would be interesting. And I know it's quite an endeavor to kind of have us take on to some extent, and but I hope that we continue to keep options in front of us and look at them going forward. And I'm appreciative that the Lincoln County ESC under new leadership is working to get their costs down. And if there's other ways we can inspire and help them in that process, I hope we can.
Gentle nudge.
More questions?
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
Dr. Corman?
Aye.
Mr. Wolf?
Aye.
Ms. Deeds?
Aye.
Mr. Janice?
Aye.
Consent agenda 1401A through D. A through D.
So moved.
Second?
Okay, I'd like to call a couple items to your attention. We have a couple of donations that we appreciate our community members thinking of us when it comes time to donate either materials or money. So we appreciate that. The other item under supplemental contracts, the hiring of Justin Buttermore, who is going to be our head coach for football. Very excited about Coach Buttermore. He's definitely got an energy and enthusiasm that I think will be fantastic. And, you know, he's replacing J.R. Waite, who had very big shoes to fill. And so he's inheriting a really good program. And I think his perspective is to bring it to a great program. He is also listed under certified contracts under GHS Social Studies teacher. Sean, this is kind of a domino effect, but let me share with you what has happened. So remember, Mr. Kruger left in 7th grade science. Meg Holler, who is a current social studies teacher, is also certified in biology and science. She wanted the science position, so we transferred her internally. Sean Felder, who is currently teaching high school social studies, wanted to move to the middle school. He did our middle school play. He likes that age range, and so that transfer was granted, which opened up the position for Mr. Buttermore to come in. And Justin has taught AP U.S. history at Tri-Valley before, so I think this is surprising that all of these things aligned, quite honestly, and I'm very thankful. Kevin, Matt did a fantastic job of running that process, and I think we have a great football coach and a great teacher. So excited about that. We have
May I add something to what you just said? I was asked to be part of the final interviews, and I want to commend the district and the staff for the way it was run. It was very well run. I liked how it was set up, that because we as the outsiders, as I called ourselves, we don't know what goes into the teaching position and those sort of things. So the process, you took care of all those details, and they presented some great candidates. We were really lucky, the folks that applied and that you came down to. So just wanted to commend everyone for that process. It was I thought it was a very good process.
Thank you. And then the only other thing that I would highlight is Megan Strayer's actual resignation at the end. And Megan has served our staff or our students very well in her role as an intervention specialist, and we hate to see her go, but we do appreciate all that she has done for our students, and we wish her the best of luck. And then we have a couple of field trips.
Which are parent sponsored?
Parents pay for those trips, yes.
Questions? No? Okay.
Ms. Dees?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
Dr. Corman?
Aye.
Mr. Wolf?
Aye.
Mr. Janus?
Aye.
That brings us to financials.
So the first is the monthly financial report for February.
Motion to, oh, sorry.
So moved.
Second?
You have the report in your folder. I will take a few more minutes than I normally do just to bring Mr. Wolf up a little bit on what the report looks like on a monthly basis. I will actually offer to, probably in the next couple weeks, for him to come in for us to sit down and go through
Well,
finances.
There will be a new board member orientation process. I
Yes.
apologize in advance. You didn't, nobody told me. I know. Now that you're in, some people want Yeah, exactly.
So I will briefly go through this for Mr. Wolf's benefit, starting with page 4, which is the comparison to the October forecast. Overall, again, there's nothing new here that we have not seen before, where the forecast has gotten a little bit weaker in the short run, but better in the long run, because of the insurance choices that the staff made at our open enrollment for the new insurance. Because more chose the higher deductible plan, there was more upfront costs from the HSA. And you'll actually see a slide that addresses this near the end. But that does create longer-term savings to the district. Our year-over-year revenue on page 5 is inflated right now because of the timing of our property tax payments coming from the county. They are running ahead of last year, which just means that we've gotten them a little bit faster. I am expecting the settlement this week. I have, in discussions with some of my business partners over the weekend, or in our call yesterday, a couple of them who've already gotten their settlements have seen upticks in their first half collections because of the change in federal tax law. And a lot of people prepaying their entire 2018 obligation prior to January 1st. This will tend to be more concentrated in more affluent areas, of course, which we are one. So I would not be surprised if once we get the settlement, if it looks quite a bit stronger than last year. Keep in mind what that will mean is that our July and August payments will look correspondingly weaker. So this year may look a little bit better, and next year may look next fiscal year may look a little bit weaker because of the timing shift. Again, I should have a much better idea of that probably at least by next week. We're expecting the settlements, based on what we heard from the county, sometime late this week. On the expenditure side, expenditures are about 5% ahead of last year. That is, the biggest chunk of that is in benefits. That is because of the change in the benefit structure, in the health insurance structure, where we have made a lot of upfront payments into HSAs. So that has inflated our expenditures in the short run. That will be offset as we move through the next 9 months. If you take a look on page 7, our revenues compared to estimates, again, they are running quite a bit above right now, but you'll see that's all in real estate for the same reasons we just talked about. The money is coming in a little bit faster and may again be a little bit ahead this half payment.
And these would be the first tax payments that include the reappraisal of values, which would not impact our overall revenue that we generate, but it would improve the shuffle of where it comes from, except for the outside.
We're expecting about a 1.4, 1.5% net increase because of the reappraisal. So that's going to cause some of it to, it's going to be actual growth, but then we may also see from the timing. So I think we'll see a combination. Our expenditures are running, again, also ahead of estimate. But again, all of those are in 2 areas. The benefits is a big chunk of that, again, because of the health insurance and the, if you look at debt intergovernmental, that is just because I did not put the payments on the lease purchase. I did not put one in December that we were going to have. They're all actually listed in June. And so that will correct itself by the end of the year as well. The payments themselves are exactly what we're expecting. It's just the timing is not what I put in the forecast. Monthly cash flow, monthly cash balances, we are remaining above our adopted targets other than in January of next year, which is our low point of the year of finances. We do bump back up above that again after January, although you will see by June of next year, again, without any influx from the levy, we are finishing the year right at the level where we want our cash balances to be, which means going forward, we will start moving below that threshold beyond fiscal year 2019. Current cash, we have $9.5 million of cash. This is the point of the year where we are most flush because we are getting our property tax settlements. We will hit our peak amount next month, by the end of this month. When we get our final property tax settlements will be our high point of the year in cash. And this is cash across all funds, not just in the operating fund. The two pieces I wanted to point out that are extra this month, page 11, you will see this is our medical premium expenses. The HSA contributions are not in here. They are in a different object code, but you see starting in January, the very sharp drops in our medical premiums for both certified and classified staff as the new healthcare program has come into effect. And again, this will make up for the additional HSA payments that we made at the beginning of January as we work through the rest of this calendar year. The last page is just an update of our electricity expenditures. I provided this a couple months ago as we just look at the impacts of the energy project that was completed over the summer with the retrofitting of all the lights and the sensors. And you can see our electric costs through the first 9 months of the year are down about 14% from where they were last year. Last year, you see that zero in March, but you also look back in August and there were 2 months payments back in August. So we actually got back onto a normal schedule in March. And you see a big drop and then dip between January and March of this year. That was an AEP change in their billing and metering. And our February bill did not include all of our buildings. I know that we did not get billed for the intermediate school in February. There may have been some other bills that we did not get. And so that's why February is low and March is high, is because of the timing of the billing from AEP.
Thank you, Mike.
Any questions?
I have one.
Yeah.
Can you just let me know on page 11, what's the difference between certified staff and classified staff?
Certified staff are primarily our teachers and others who are paid off of the certified salary schedule.
Okay.
Classified staff is everybody else.
Okay.
They have a teaching certification, is that what?
They have a teaching certification and are hired as a teacher.
Right.
Because we do have some classified staff who have teaching certifications but have not been hired in a certified position.
Okay.
But
Thanks.
that's the distinction.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
No.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
Dr. Corman?
Aye.
Mr. Wolf?
Aye.
Ms. Deeds?
Aye.
Mr. Janice?
Aye.
The next is the adoption of our tax rates for the current year.
I will second Amy's motion.
That really did sound like it. I know it wasn't Fred. That's all I knew.
I'm waiting for the adjournment to step up.
Wait.
We will let you.
This is the resolution we normally pass each year in January. I did not put it in front of the board in January because of the errors in the data that I found from the county, and I was not willing to have you adopt our tax rates until the county actually got them correct. They are now correct based on the data that have been revised, so I am comfortable with you adopting them, and actually we have to because they need to be adopted by March 31st. But they are correct, so I was fine putting it in front of you at this point.
Questions?
Ms. Deeds?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
Dr. Corman?
Aye.
Mr. Wolf?
Aye.
Mr. Janice?
President Janice, would you allow me to, before we adjourn, I would like to recognize Dan Katona, who is in the audience. He has sat patiently through this entire meeting. He was going to speak in public comment, however, he is our levy chair, and he has been working diligently with our steering committee, meeting weekly, to really set the stage for informing our community about this ballot issue. And that's their job. And we, Dan went into this with the potential for it being a co-chair, and like others on this board got snookered by me into it being a chair position. So he is carrying the load, but has a great team supporting him. But I wanted to recognize him and thank him for his service. And hopefully all of you can, after the adjournment, can at least, if you don't know Dan, introduce yourselves.
You have our gratitude.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Thank
The
you.
hard work that you and your committee are doing. Thank you.
And our support. Continue to reach out to us.
Does anybody care to make a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Wolf?
Aye.
Ms. Deeds?
Aye.
Dr. Corman?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
Mr. Janice?
Aye, we are adjourned. Thank you.
You always have one CTEC board member who says no.